think, with just what was happening to his face. And I used to give him a hard time about the chemical peels and everything else, and he always would tell me things.
So we know a lot about Michael Jackson, and you were just talking about him. What on those albums, Thriller for example, is you?
Do you think he was so emotionally fragile because of his relationship with his father? I know he often talked about how tough his father was.
His writing,
No,
some of
man,
his
but look,
influence?
we take his stuff and take it.
I think with exactly what was befalling his face, and I used to give him trouble about the compound strips and all the other things, and he generally would let me know things, so we know a ton about Michael Jackson. And you were simply discussing him. What on those collections, Thrill Ride for instance, is you? Do you think he was so genuinely delicate in view of his relationship with his dad? I realize he frequently discussed how extreme his dad was his composing. No, look, we take his stuff and take it to one more level. There is unequivocally no legitimization for the unforgivable charges of K credited to Michael Jackson during his adulthood. By it is clear from reports that Michael Jackson additionally got through K reports of the beatings he endured on account of his dad, Joe Jackson, have been broadly archived at this point, according to different sources, including Quincy Jones. The youth injury he got through worked out in a good way, past what might have been usually known. Obviously, this could have added to the star not being excessively drawn to ladies. You needed to appear to be unique, and I suppose that is a kind of a selfa. I don't know, foolish away. Yes, there is barely an edge of the popular music world that Jones hasn't straightforwardly affected or made some meaningful difference upon. Also, his vital commitments in the domain of film and TV, procuring him Oscar and Emmy designations for his work in momentous undertakings. For example, Purple and Roots sharing chuckling taking part in Gab and relishing his own favorable luck. It's nearly like Jones himself can scarcely understand the exceptional life he has driven. You think back, and you have all that material. You put each of the components together first, and you say, my God, every one of the artists and tunes and records. And all that this is that was 500-something collections. No, normally in a vocation as broad as his there have been hindrances and discussions en route, and certain subjects stayed untouchable. For example, the charges of Psy, including quite possibly of his most notorious teammate, Michael Jackson. Anyway, the eminent and open figure of Hollywood had a lot to share on a wide cluster of Jackson's life, and particularly his troublesome youth. Michael Joseph Jackson appeared on the scene in Gary, Indiana, a modern suburb of Chicago, Illinois, on August 29, 1958. He was naturally introduced to a working-class family, the seventh of 9 kids, to Joseph Walter Joe and Catherine Esser. I have seen numerous universes, not only one, I mean in vision. From the age of 5, you've had the option to make an entire world. Jackson's excursion as an artist started in his experience growing up, and as time elapsed, his voice and vocal style went through recognizable changes, impacted either by the normal changes of pubescence or an individual tendency to adjust his singing to the topics and classifications he tried to convey. You weren't well. Who else do you think makes the stage come to genuine other than me? And itself, his melodic fitness became apparent early on when he made that big appearance during a Christmas presentation. At only 5 years of age, charming cohorts and different participants with his vocal gifts. In 1964, Michael, alongside his sibling Marlon, turned out to be essential for the Jackson siblings, a band that remembered his siblings Jackie, Tito, and Jermaine. For this troupe, Michael played conas, while Marlon took care of the tambourine, giving their melodic abilities as reinforcement performers. Yes, well, it's really radiant over here, like it tad better. Yet his experience growing up was more than this. During a television interview living with Michael Jackson, Michael expressed he was beaten by his dad. He was so frightened. He turned out to be genuinely sick when he saw him. When gotten some information about his mom, he said he could hear her shouting, "Stop, you're going to K him." Solid guardians are, I believe, are vital, particularly in our circumstance. Assuming he hit me, I would hit a back. In Michael Jackson's life, we have seen an extraordinary and profoundly disturbing account of an unfurling Before our eyes, this story follows the direction of a once cute young man whose father, Joe Jackson, was famous for truly mishandling him. Incredibly, Michael grew up to become one of the most famous figures related with maltreatment in the advanced music industry. During a meeting, Quincy himself said, "I went crazy." He said, "You realize I was unable to accept it. No, it was weighty, truly weighty. In light of the fact that the connection between a maker and a craftsman is truly extraordinary. And there's no space for BS at all. It must be unadulterated. It must be love and regard and astounding common regard for one another, on the grounds that that makes a decent record when they trust one another. And you advise them to hop. Without a net, kid, you better know what you're talking about." Many reports show that Joe Jackson was essential for a genealogy of terrible dads inside the domain of VIP families. Maybe his main opponent for the title of the most ridiculously horrible renowned father in history is Murray Wilson, the dad of the Oceanside young men Dennis Carl. And Brian Murray's awful disciplines included disrupting acts, for example, jumping out his glass eye and constraining his children to look into the unfilled attachment rehearsed us with a belt in his grass, and assuming you miss a stage hope to be the remorselessness caused by Joe Jackson was outrageous to the point that in any event, when Michael was in his 40s, he would trust in individuals that the simple idea of his dad caused him to feel truly sick. This is not really shocking, given the frightening he persevered as a kid exposed to different types of viciousness that included beatings with a scope of articles from belts and electric lines to tree limbs, and he would destroy you on the off chance that you missed thus. We, in addition to the fact that we were anxious practicing extra and exceptionally dubious cases have been made in regards to Michael Jackson, recommending that he was synthetically eliminated his genitals as a kid by his dad. These declarations come from Conrad Murray, who filled in as the pop symbol specialist at the hour of his passing. Murray in film, obtained by the VIP site. The impact went to the extent that marking Joe Jackson as one of the most exceedingly awful dads to his youngsters in history. Do individuals plan on considering any reason? Me, some other observers for this situation know, Your Honor, it's critical to take note of that Conrad Murray was indicted for Michael's compulsory homicide and got a 4-year jail sentence for regulating the narcotic propofol to the ruler of pop before he encountered a heart failure in June 2009. He at last carried out 2 years of this punishment. These cases and Murray's perspectives are important for a bigger and petulant conversation about Michael Jackson's life and childhood. Court no longer needs to gauge what are called exasperating conditions or factors, as opposed to moderating conditions or factors, yet needs to give an assertion of reasons. The thought that Joe Jackson, Michael Jackson's dad, artificially eliminated his reproductive organs of his pre-teenager child, trying to save his high tenor voice, is a paranoid fear that has flowed for quite a long time. The hypothesis proposes that synthetic evacuation of his reproductive organs was utilized to keep up with the kid's honest quality and great falsetto nimbleness of Michael's voice. While this hypothesis has taken different exciting bends in the road, it's essential to consider the realities in regards to synthetic expulsion of his genitals and the accessible proof. Yet this is the thing Joe Rogan said, "You know my hypothesis about Michael Jackson. Let me know individuals going to don't say it again. Let me know all that I believe he's a caster. I think he had his being moved, I believe. That is the reason his voice was so high. Artificially expulsion of man's genitals normally includes the organization of hostile to androgen medications to diminish or smother the development of male chemicals testosterone. The expected impact is to lessen want and conduct in people with specific circumstances, including it isn't normally used to save a high-performing voice." In 2016, Conrad Murray, Michael Jackson's PCP, guaranteed in his book, "This is all there is to it, The Mystery Lives of Dr. Conrad Murray and Michael Jackson," that Joe Jackson had Michael go through chemical infusions At 12 years old, utilizing a compound medication, which is utilized to eliminate the parts these infusions were claimed to be for skin breakout therapy, and to keep Michael's voice from shifting during pubescence of direction on the most secret motherlode of his life, is with me yet I have safeguarded Michael. Up till now, Michael Jackson's vocal reach has been the subject of discussion among fans and singing specialists. While he had a great vocal reach covering 3 to 4 octaves, it is entirely expected among achieved vocalist specialists like Freddie Mercury and Chris. Additionally exhibited comparative vocal reaches. One of Michael's fans composed Michael Jackson's customary voice was profound run-of-the-mill male tone. He was not a caster. He utilized the exceptionally pitched voice. We as a whole know to safeguard his performing voice, and a kind of a veil solace cover to conceal and shield his weakness from the public. His piercing voice was a piece of the person he depicted. While engaging, he talked about this and made sense of why he utilized his shrill voice constantly while he was out in the open with cameras, wherever it was fundamentally safeguarding his nothing named picture similarity, since fans accepted it was genuine. And that is the way he got compensated. The hypothesis that Michael Jackson's voice was a consequence of synthetic